Hello, and welcome to the World Changemaker podcast, where we have engaging conversations with everyone from entrepreneurs to advocates. I'm your host, Cinnamon Alvarez. Be ready to get inspired because our guest today is going to share their story, insights, and golden nuggets with us about how they're making a meaningful difference in people's lives and in our communities. Hello and welcome to the World Changemaker podcast, where I personally am so excited to be joined by Melissa Fackler today from One Team Partners. Is your business, Melissa, right?
Good morning.
And what's so exciting is that Melissa's work is connecting business and human connection, which is very deeply aligned with the mission of World Changemaker. Not that every guest isn't, but that is already so exciting. I want to start first by having Melissa introduce yourself, Melissa, if you don't mind. But I really want you to talk about your decade in hospitality and how that connects and moved you to what you do now through One Team Partners.
Absolutely. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you again so much for having me. I'm excited to be here also. Like Cinnamon said, I work at One Team Partners, and we are a small business consulting company that we've kind of flipped the word consulting into coaching. And so we come in and kind of coach businesses on how to be able to thrive every available moment, both in work and life. And my background is in hospitality. So the first about 11 years of my career and my schooling was all in hospitality. So I've worked in hotels, a little bit in restaurant, and then main chunk of my career was in the private event sector. So entertainment and venue side of things. And so, in hospitality, I think it's ingrained in us that it's always about people, right? Like it's always about the experience that someone's having, and we are willing to move all ends of the earth to make sure that that experience is great. And I've never really understood why that wasn't transferable across all industries. Like, I think the work that we're doing should be enjoyable, and it should be something that, you want to do your best to make people love doing. And it was really interesting to me when I decided to leave hospitality to start seeing that that wasn't the case. And so it kind of took me back to the drawing board to understand, like, why do some of the things that we focus so much on in hospitality not exist in these other business opportunities, and how can I start to bring those worlds together to help people thrive?
That's amazing because you're absolutely right. I think in business, and I'm taking it off of even the outline of the questions I wanted to ask you, but do we somehow disconnect that all business is about being of service? And that we look at the benefits and what we actually do in business, but it's really about how the person feels receiving the product or the service and making their life better. So that you saw that connection or that disconnection. So how did you bring that into, do you mind describing like what a regular day looks like in the work of how you can transform a business into making that hospitality type experience for people? What does that
Yeah,
entail?
well, I think the main thing for me is we talk regularly, and even just when you ask the question, you mentioned that it, like, for the people receiving the service. But I think for me and for the work that I do, I like to think about it for the employee. So, like, how are we making sure that we are providing a hospitable experience internally? And
Mm.
then that will waterfall trickle effect externally, right? And so that is the work that I do on a daily basis with teams is, are we providing the experience we need to provide for each other? Are we creating the space internally so that then we can take that and turn around and make a difference externally?
Got it. Got it. Yeah, which is very clear. But you're right. See how even just in my framing of the question, I wasn't coming from that perspective of creating the hospitality experience for team
Yeah.
internally. I was already thinking about the experience for the customer,
Mm-hmm.
which is amazing. You also talk about the difference between surviving and thriving. What does that mean? What is the difference in your own words between surviving and thriving? And how does that show up in action?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, they're like polar opposites. So, thriving, I imagine myself hanging on by a thread and just going through the motions. And so I think oftentimes when we're in survival mode, it's like, what are the things I have to do? We're in autopilot. These are this, I am required to do this. I need to make sure I check this off my list. And then I think when we move into a state of thriving, our work becomes joy filled again. It's what I want to be doing, it's what I'm passionate about doing. And this concept of, you'll rarely, if ever, hear me say like work-life balance. I usually just try to say balance because it's all one big life. It's all my life, and I need to balance it in every way that I can. And so I think when we start to talk about thriving, it's feeling that sense of balance in whatever that looks like in the season that you're in. So in some seasons, balance is a little bit more work heavy for me because that's where I need to be spending time. And in other seasons, I'm a little bit lighter on the work side because I'm more focused on things going on in personal life. And so I think that's when we're truly thriving, is when there's the space to make those decisions instead of being forced into deciding.
Yeah. But to be honest, I mean, there are points of survival. Like things happen in
Absolutely.
life and in business, therefore life. I love that you say that to me. Also, I can't stand when people say work life balance. I want to work less. I'm like, this is where we spend our time. This is my life. I love my work. I love my people. I spend more time with Max that I work with than my husband, you know?
Hmm.
Like I want to love my life. This is my life. But I mean, it does get hard. Sometimes there's not enough money to pay the bills, or sometimes there's, a health emergency that you have to deal with. So there's real survival also that occurs. Do you have any
Yeah.
tips in how to have that be a sense, a part of the thriving versus something you're trying to avoid?
Wow, that's a good question. I like the direction that you're taking this because I think that's kind of a misconception with the concept of thriving, is that like, especially, so one team, the team stand is an acronym for thrive every available moment. And we've even talked internally of like, does that set an idea that you have to always be thriving, otherwise it's a problem? Or like, if
Right.
I'm not having a day that I feel like I'm thriving, am I failing the company? Am I failing myself? All of those things. And so I would say that there's survival piece is, I do think in some ways it is a mindset. So we jump to a place of panic, of like the animal, almost the primal animal in us takes over of like, I have to survive this. And I think there's a lot of breath work and different, focus and mentalities that we can start to implement as habits to just like take a beat, take a pause, step back, let me re-ground myself, let me go for a walk and remove myself from a situation so I can reestablish calm and all of those things. I think that is a really important piece of my life and the work that I do and what I talk to clients about often. But then I also think it is a reframing of that thriving doesn't mean every single moment is perfect. And I think that is, if we can change that mindset as well, of like, I'm allowed to have a bad moment. I'm allowed to have a bad day.
Mhm.
I'm even allowed to have a bad week. Like sometimes I'm tired, and sometimes that is showing up in a way that I am needing a little bit of space from the work that I'm so regularly in. And so I think giving grace to ourselves, to our teammates, having open dialogue about it. The worst thing is to try to hide it. Like that is where we then internalize, we spiral, we do all of these things where it's like you're not giving yourself the space to have the conversation, to grieve whatever we need to grieve, like whatever those feelings
Mhm.
are. That was a long answer to a short question,
No, but it
but
was so great because, and if you don't mind, I even want to piggyback on top of it is
yeah.
that one of the things that statistically we see that employees want in the workplace is growth.
Mm,
And I think one of the things we often underestimate, right, or undervalue is that in those difficult, challenging times is where the growth takes place.
mhm,
So I love how you said, give it grace, right? It is part of life. And so instead of rushing to fix it and change it and to, in hospitality, we think of like, I'll use Disneyland. That's a terrible example because it's so cliche, but right, it's this. it almost occurs like it's an artificial, like a short term experience of constant joy, 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 joy. But even at Disneyland, the kids are crying and screaming and they're afraid of the rides. And like that's how life is, that we have all of it. So I love that you say you give it grace. And it sounds like you also bring a lot of tools and
Yeah.
techniques to how to get through those moments.
Well, I like what you just said, and I want to talk for a second about, so
Mm,
we talk a lot about the comfort zone and growth zone at one team, and we use that vocabulary often. And I'm looking at a graphic on my screen that I just pulled up quickly, but it's basically it shows like when you start in the comfort zone, in order to get to the growth zone, you have to go through the fear zone and the learning zone. And oftentimes people say, I'm ready to leave my comfort zone, and they step into fear, and then it's like, never mind. And, if we want to keep with this Disneyland example, I know for myself as a kid, I got in line for a roller coaster a lot of times and chickened out in the line, right? Because I entered the fear zone and then
jumped
was
out.
like, I'm gonna go back to where I'm comfortable. Let's go ride a different thing. Like I wasn't ready to do that. And so we talk a lot about in giving grace and in growth and all those things. Like if we want to get to that place of growth, which you're saying statistics are showing we do, we have to be willing to push through the fear and the learning and the discomfort that comes with both of those. And I think that's where teams, leadership, all of those other pieces can come into play to really help us through those zones to enter a state of growth.
Yeah, it's amazing. You're making me think of a panel discussion I heard recently where one of the panelists said, the struggle is the work.
Mm,
So he trains his team to not expect there to have absence of struggle, to
hmm
expect and create that struggle, that's the growth that you thrive on. So just similar, now I'm thinking of standing in the line like I want the roller coaster. I throw my hands up in the air, bring it on, right? And so
hmm
that's even one of the tricks that I play for myself is I call it the game on mindset. When something really, if I'm in that empowered place, when something bad happens, that trigger goes and says, okay, game on, right? Like, let's do this. It's kind of fun and adventurous. Like, did I just sign up for this crazy, scary game? And other times I'm very human and I get taken out and feel sorry for myself and I'm
hmm
overwhelmed and I don't know what to do. If you would allow me, I'd like to pivot to a slightly different topic in the workplace and in the world right now, all time high trust. So I think that especially with AI, with you're calling a business and you don't know who you're speaking to. Is it a real person? Is it someone overseas? In the business workplace, there's a lot about money, survival. Is there enough money or not enough money? And then we also have, the state of the world in general, not to get into politics and war and everything else. But how do you build trust and belonging, which I think is also a core need and desire for people is to feel like they belong? How do you do that in the workplace?
This is one of my favorite things to talk about. I love that we're
Oh,
going here.
good. So
I
needed right now. Just,
Yeah, it is. And I think if I was going to answer it in like a one short phrase, it would be showing up authentically. But I
mm,
think it's bigger than that. And the culture that you create in your teams, in your companies, I think the crux of your success. So it's the culture that you're building, the psychologically safe environment, the trust, the all of these pieces that you're kind of alluding to in the question. None of that happens accidentally. That's all built because it was intentionally chosen to be built that way. And I think what we see a lot with small teams is when they're starting out, they don't think they need to build a culture because it's like, oh, it's just two of us. We'll figure it out when there's 20 of us. We'll talk about it then. And what people don't realize is culture builds itself if you don't choose to build it. And so being really intentional, and we do a lot of work when we come into a business, starting with brand values. So core values of the brand, understanding why you built the business the way that you built it. And then starting to do this kind of, we look into saying, do the actions match? So are the habits that you've built matching the values that you want? And then we need to assess that. So that's the biggest piece is yes, they match, great, you're doing amazing. No, they don't match. Now where's the disconnect? Are the values wrong? Probably not. Typically, when you picked your values, you picked them for a reason. So now we need to reassess, why do these habits not align? And what can we start to implement to the company to rebuild towards those values?
I'm relating and I want to go back and say it again because that was really profound to me. If you don't build the culture intentionally, it will build itself. What were the words that you used?
Oh gosh, I think it was pretty much that. If you
Similar
don't choose if you don't build the culture the way that
and
you want it, the
design it
culture
the way
will
you want
build
it.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of reminds me, somebody taught me years and years ago that if you don't have a social media presence, and somebody goes to look for you, they will find something. So give them something to find.
Mm,
Right? So it's also, if you don't intentionally build it how you want it, it will build it, which is one of the things that I think is most exciting of business is the leadership. It goes through the veins of the company, like it or not.
mm,
So for me, I look at businesses as like these creative mediums, art pieces where it's like, oh, that's a personality, that's somebody's core values in play through their business. So what you're saying is that as the business leader, if you don't intentionally design your culture and you aren't clear what those core values are, and
hmm
you aren't clear, because this is, I think, what the reason I'm saying it this way is I think it's common mistake when you get in the trenches in survival mode that you lose sight of, why am I doing this? What's so important and touches me at the heart level? What's the mission? What am I out to accomplish? What's the vision that I see as a possibility if I'm successful? How does the world become a better place? So you're saying if we don't start with that and we don't make that clear from the beginning and every day, because I think we lose it,
That's the key. Yep.
then, and instead we fall into, oh no, I need to pay the bills, that the culture is going to be, oh no, we need to pay the bills
Correct.
instead of, I'm going to make the world a better place.
Correct. And when you're leading from a place of why you're doing it instead of what you have to do, the desire is different, the outcome is different. Like all of those things, if you're doing it from, I'm really tired, but I have to keep going to pay the bills, that result is very different than, I love doing this because of the change that I'm making and I'm
Yeah.
gonna keep doing it, right? And like, it's a simple switch of vocabulary, of mindset, all of the things. But if we are regularly speaking that language, if we're regularly referring back to our values, saying those words, it's like I've seen so many TikToks of like, stop saying I have to do it, start saying I get to do it. I don't have to do the dishes, I get to do the dishes. I don't
Yeah,
have.
we're choosing to be
And
here.
it's like people say, it's like, oh, that one change of word changes my whole day because I realize I have more gratitude in the things that I'm doing. And so it's like, it's the same thing at work. If we use the values as our language to remind ourselves regularly why we're doing this, the inspiration and the motivation should most days, and that's the caveat, right? It's not going to be always, it's not every time. I'm not always, there are days I'm just tired and I'm
Yeah.
allowed to be tired and I don't need to guilt myself because of my values, but it's going to push people further because they want to, not because they have to.
And it's really interesting because I could talk to you just about this alone all day long. But the core values of the business are not always aligned with everyone on the team. We're often there for different reasons. So one of my current obsessions is the trend that we're seeing of trading work for a paycheck versus choosing, like, I'm going to do this work because it aligns with my core values and this is the difference I want to make. So sometimes it really, we're there for different reasons. Right? In team, we want to be aligned, but sometimes it really just is like, hey, if you don't pay me more, I'm going somewhere else. Or if you can't work around my schedule because I have a young person at home I need to take care of, I'm going somewhere else. Right? Or if I can't work from home, I'm going somewhere else. So there can be competing values underneath the work that's getting done. Do you have any advice, or can you speak to that? Like, it's not
Yeah.
only the company's values.
Oh, absolutely. I think to me, that is a value misalignment. And that tells me that it's not a right fit. And so I think on a recent podcast I was on, we had a conversation that was a little bit similar. And I went through our values at one team and she was saying, like, wow, you're one of the first companies I've heard where your values are about the individuals. So our values at one team are practice self-care, bring your whole self, be present, invest in relationships, and commit to learning. And so we do those things and we kind of tell it as a story. So in that order, I have to practice self-care to bring my whole self, to be present. It kind of goes in that order. But those are things that for us, when we're hiring, when we're bringing people in, like if that doesn't align, then you're not going to be happy here and you're not going to be motivated. You're not like all of those things are not going to be correct. And if I'm someone, in the example that you gave, like if I need to be able to have time and space to be home with my children and the company culture is that we are at our desk from 8 to 5 and grinding, like that's a misalignment. And it doesn't mean either person is right or wrong or better or worse. Like it's not a right match. And so the key to thriving is to be aligned, is to find the place that values the same things that you value and that you're able to share those together. Otherwise, I just don't know. It's very hard to feel good and to be comfortable and to thrive in a space where you just aren't aligning.
So it's interesting. We're going to run out of time, but I want to say something. This is in a culture of the United States. The culture is we're a capitalist society. I remember when I formed my corporation, what stood out to me in the business planning process and books, and do you form a corporation, a sole proprietorship, that you're creating an entity and that your obligation is to the survival of the corporation, like for the bottom. And I remember that really standing out, thinking, this is really kind of a bizarre culture that we live in, where our first and foremost, the priority is to the shareholders, like the profit of the shareholders and the survival of the corporation. And that's kind of the American culture, which is very different than the values at One Team Partners. And I'm wondering if that's part of why you have limitless numbers of potential clients, because that's part of our bigger culture that we live in.
Yeah, it's a valid hypothesis for sure. I think it's that and it's a generation that's different, a different mentality of work, 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 grind, grind, grind. There's that piece as well. Like the generation before me has a very different mindset than the generation that's coming into the workplace now and it's blending those and gosh, I think that's so much bigger of a question than the amount of time we have left, but
Right.
it's a good thing to think about. You have me
It's
pondering.
so it goes back into the bigger team and trust, and everything we really talked about is, so I think that we can some the opposition piece is there's what's good for me and what's good for the greater good. That's how I make some decisions for myself, is I say what's best for the greatest good, myself included. That we dynamic, versus sometimes in the workplace it's an us, it seems like the us versus them in the bigger world. And at work, there's the bottom line of the company that you're working towards, there's the leadership, there's the employee, and we're not really against each other, even though sometimes it can seem that way. Right, that this is how I do it for myself, as I remind myself, this is our life and we are doing this together. And I ask my team, do we want to continue doing this together? This is what we're making. I happen to make lighting fixtures that go into these most remarkable designed spaces that give people a sense of, peace and calm and experience and resorts. And but it takes some reminding that that's the difference that we make when in our widgets that we make called lighting fixtures. But that's what I do with my team, is I keep asking them pretty regularly, like, do we still want to do this together? Are we having fun at play, at work, doing this together?
Mm,
Versus, oh, Cinnamon's the boss. you know, do I
yeah,
want to do this for her? I'm like, no, no, no. Do
right.
we want to do this together? Interesting. And I don't think I took your advice and really was clear. I did the work on the business plan. And what I remember about my business plan, I'm going to use all of our time here, is there were two steps of the plan. There was like the finance, the structure. Are you going to be a corporation or not? The money, da, 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 da. But the part that was so profound was like, what do you want life to look like? And I designed my business. That's what really stood out, is that piece of like, who do I want around me in my life? What do I want my days to look like? And
Hmm.
so, in a way, I guess inadvertently, I didn't know it then because I was so young and naive, but I was designing the culture from day one. But then I've gone back over, it's been over 25 years of constantly redesigning what we want our work to look like. And do we
And that's
still want
good.
to do
It
this?
should be evolving always. Like, I think that's another thing is people assume like, oh, I wrote it day one, it's done. And it's like, hold on. Like,
Oh,
the world grows, we grow, our business grows, things change. Like, that those pieces are going to evolve with us. I mean, even just our values themselves have not changed, but the way that we've defined them and the way that we've talked about how they go into practice has evolved because we've evolved, we've grown. It's changed a little bit.
it's a journey for sure. Lots of times to pivot. Okay, so Melissa, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Let's leave our listeners with what I call the cinnamon challenge, not because it's about me, but because somebody made fun of me a long time ago about like the ice bucket challenge and the cinnamon challenge.
Love it.
What would you challenge our audience to do to get some value for themselves from our conversation?
We should keep on the value train. So I think
Awesome.
taking, 5, 10 minutes to sit down and go through what your company's core values are. Find, is there some that speak to you more? Do you align with all of them? Are there some that you question if there's alignment? And just start to have the awareness of understanding, like, is this the perfect place for me? Do I love the work that I'm doing because this is why I do it? And that should really align, I hope. And if not, then that gets us to start the assessment of, am I not happy here? Do I let, what are the other pieces? I think for a lot of people, they don't even realize it's that simple until something like this happens. And then they're like, wait, that's why I'm not happy because I don't want to do it for the same why that they want to do it. And so it's a very quick way to realize how aligned or not aligned you are with your company.
That's amazing. And I want to say it again in another way for anyone and everyone listening, even if it's a student, is to ask yourself what's most important to me? What's most important to me? And how does that show up in my life? And how can I make that right? Because there are things that we can do. In fact, when I'm upset about something, we talked about survival mode. What I've trained myself to do is first not brush over it and say, wait, I'm triggered here because there's something really beautiful about myself that I care so deeply about. And those are core values. But the reason I wanted to say it another way is some people have a hard time and they think they need to do an entire values workshop, and
No, I
which
love
we
that.
could do.
That's
We could give
helpful.
you all of the resources for all of
Yes.
those things. And sometimes it's as simple as like, what's most important to me? What's most important to me? And hopefully, in one of those things is other people and relationships, because I think that's ultimately
Yeah.
very important. The sense of
Even just
belonging.
looking, like Googling a list of values is a great way to start too. Of, you look at a list of 30 and say which five are the most important to me in the way that I live my life is a
Yeah.
great way to
What
do it.
speaks to me off of this list most
Hmm.
and narrow it down.
Because sometimes
Um,
it is hard to be like, oh, gosh, what do I care the most about? It can become an overwhelming thought.
makes me think of the book, The Five Love Languages.
Mm,
Sometimes we
they're
speak
all
very
mine.
different languages, right? Yes.
I'm like, I like all of them.
Oh, well, Melissa, thank you so much. This was such a great conversation.
It
I
was.
got a lot out of it, so I know our listener is going to. I just really appreciate you. We will have all of the information to find you, but can you tell our guests also how do they find One Team Partners and you specifically?
Absolutely. We are very active on our Instagram page. So One Team Partners, that's 1ONE, Team Partners dot thrive is our Instagram handle. So we'd love some new followers and interactions there. And then we do also have a school community. We call it Big Talk, where we once a week meet and have conversations very similar to this, just with business owners and leaders that want to come in and chat about whatever's going on in their world. For listeners that listening on this podcast, if they want to send us an email it's school@oneteampartners.com with the World Changemakers podcast in the subject line, they'll not only get the free 7-day trial that comes from school, but then also an individual one-on-one with me.
That's amazing. Thank you for your generosity. That's wonderful.
Absolutely. We would love to continue having conversations and having big talk with other.
Imagine the world if everyone had one conversation like this a day. It would be
It would be
amazing.
quite amazing. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you so much for joining us for another inspiring episode of the World Changemaker podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, would you please take a moment to subscribe to our channel on your preferred platform? Your support really means the world to us. If you could leave us a review, we'd appreciate that too. Until next time, remember that the work you do makes a difference, and keep changing the world in amazing ways.